The Washington Capitals finally get it done. They've won the 2018 Stanley Cup. And oh boy, does Washington deserve it. Their first Stanley Cup in franchise history, and it's a long time coming after years of them being the favorite. The favorite is their year. It's Washington's year when people aren't expecting them to make the playoffs, when they made trades to make themselves worse, when they've had free agents walk, when the people thought it wasn't their year, they finally go ahead and smash those expectations. Now, Washington has been a team that I've liked for a while. They've never been my favorite team, but they've always been there. I've always liked how they played, their players, and the team in general. The guys like Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Oshie, Backstrom, Holtley, a lot of these guys are very likable and very, very good. And while the team was good, it wasn't the main reason why I was liking them so much. It was mainly the factor that those storylines, the narratives that they couldn't get past the second round, that Ovechkin could never get past the second round, that everything about that, and just the players and what has gone so far throughout that franchise is really what drew me to it. And of course, with me cheering against them for the Pittsburgh Penguins the last few years, I've always usually been disappointed. This season, it was of course the exception. Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals finally got past their demons and got past the second round. And while a lot of people thought that, they would kind of settle down a little bit after that, because to them, there was concerns that it would be their Stanley Cup getting past the Pittsburgh Penguins. And boy, did they not really take that lightly. Washington Capitals win in 7 games against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and of course win in a whopping 5 games against the Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm not going to go too much into the series because I am going to go make a separate video about the Vegas Golden Knights, about their loss in the series, and also another video to wrap up the series as a whole. But the Washington Capitals, of course, have defied all expectations and erased the narratives of the players and the team in general. They couldn't get past the second round. They couldn't make it to the Stanley Cup. It really wasn't their year, and they showed those doubters. And of course, since it wasn't pegged to be their year, they finally go out and get it done. And honestly, I've just been proud of this team, even though I'm a Dallas Stars fan, a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, a Vegas Golden Knights fan. Those are my top 3 teams. I've always liked the Capitals. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for the Capitals. I've always wanted them to succeed, to get past the second round, to erase all those narratives. And even though they're facing Vegas, one of my favorite teams, and of course win against them, I always had a hot soft spot for them, and I've always wanted them to win it, and just to see it happen, Ovechkin lifting the cup, probably one of my most satisfying moments ever. Of Washington, just seeing them get it done, finally. I mean, they've had the expectations for so long. Ovechkin and all the players there have come through and had the expectation to win the Stanley Cup. It's about time they get it done, and never better to place and a time to get it done with. I mean, the core, who knows how long that is going to last, and of course the team, it's funny because we all thought this was a lesser team than the last few years just because they didn't have any good players, but hey, sometimes it just doesn't matter about the players, sometimes about how the players that you have execute. And this playoffs, man, they've been fantastic of just having everybody roll, especially in the Stanley Cup final. In the last couple of rounds, they've had everybody rolling. They've had all compartments going on full capacity, and it seems like everything about the Washington Capitals was going right, and it finally felt like their year. And to Alex Ovechkin, of course, he finally slays those Dragons. He finally gets it done. You can no longer use the no cups argument against him, which is very satisfying. Ovechkin proving the doubters wrong. Of course, this year had a great playoffs and will continue to be good for the Washington Capitals. And of course, they're his captain, proving the doubters wrong about him being a bad captain, him being not a leader. We've seen some big things from Ovechkin in both the improvement of his area in the game and the leadership, and he finally proves those doubters wrong. He finally gets to lift the Stanley Cup, the first Russian ever to lift the Stanley Cup as the captain for an NHL team. And honestly, no better player to do that than Alex Ovechkin. Of course, he's proving all of them wrong. And again, it hasn't sunk in yet, and I don't think it will sink in for a while, that Washington has finally got it done after all the expectations, after all the years, after more than 40 years of being in the league. They finally are able to slay the dragon and are finally, again, I've used the word finally a lot, finally are able to get past that hump that they've been working on for a long time. And it's satisfying to know, and it's great to sleep at night knowing that Washington has finally done it, and that Ovechkin can finally sway that argument and finally have a cup in his threshold. And again, it still is that raw impression, but I'm still not over it. The impressions is fantastic, and I'm still trying to get over it, but it hasn't sunk in yet. Ovechkin is a Stanley Cup champion. It's finally happened. But I'm happy for a fan base that has had misery and disappointment year after year. A team that has failed expectations year after year, and they finally get it done. For that fan base, I'm really happy for them of finally getting something to cheer for and finally being able to be happy about in the playoffs. The Washington Capitals are no longer playoff chokers. The memes are no longer with the Washington Capitals. They're avoided now. The Washington Capitals have done it. They are 2018 Stanley Cup champions. Now, if you would have said that earlier in the season, I could see that. And the thing was, at the early season, yeah, I kind of saw that could happen because I knew that there's less expectations for the Washington Capitals team. They've lost a lot in free agency, and they've lost some pieces. They have had some weird contracts there. But I feel like since they had that less pressure, since they won the President's Trophy, since they were the best team overall, that had some less pressure on them, even though they did win the division. They had some less pressure. A lot of their guys definitely played well, and even though they got rid of some guys in the offseason, the guys that came in were fantastic in both the regular season and the NHL playoffs. And I don't think you can really argue this. This is probably the most complete Washington Capitals team in the playoffs that I think we've ever seen. Holtby was fantastic. The defense was shutting a Vegas offense that was explosive at times. And the offense, what needs to be said, on the power play, they were lethal. 5-on-5, they were lethal. Everything about the Washington Capitals was lethal in the playoffs. And it was probably the most complete that I think I've ever seen them. So while they may have had technically a better team in the last few years, this is probably the best team that I've seen overall-wise, whether they have the names or not, that I think I've ever seen going to the playoffs, and I think a lot of you guys can agree with that. But the fan base deserves it, the team deserves it, and pretty much the entire organization has deserved something, deserved a championship for how long now? It's been 40 years. This team deserved it, and they finally got it. They get to rest easy, and they finally got it. And while it's taken a while, they have some bumps and bruises. The title has finally came to them, and they've finally gotten it. So congratulations to the 2018 Stanley Cup champions, the Washington Capitals, with Alex Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Nicholas Backstrom, Braden Holtby, T.J. Oshie, Brett Connolly, Matt Niskanen, all those guys. Congratulations to the whole team, the fan base, and the Washington Capitals in general. But that's going up for today, guys. Guys, enjoy. Make sure to like and subscribe. And the Washington Capitals are your 2018 Stanley Cup champions. It still hasn't sunk in yet.